Before dawn on the leafless plains, he gathered about 50 skilled fighters and mercenaries to share a simple plan he called Witch Cult Hunting Made Simple, even though speaking to such veterans made him nervous at first. The group included sharp allies like Julius, Ferris, Ricardo, and Wilhelm, and after a bit of light teasing about his public speaking, they fixed their focus on how to stop the witch cult fast. He explained the core idea plainly. Lure out the enemy and take the head first by killing the Archbishop of Sloth right away, so the rest of the cult would break without their leader. Ricardo noted the idea was good if it could be done. Julius pushed him to explain the odds, and he said his unique scent drew demon beasts and cultists without fail, which made him the perfect decoy and gave the team a clear way to force an encounter. They discussed options like sheltering the mansion, staff, and villagers, but he argued that staying put only helped the cult adjust and win on their own terms. He connected the White Whale's mist blockade to the cult's plan to isolate the Mather's domain, and said that made the forest around Roswaal Manor the most likely hiding place for the enemy. Using hard-won knowledge from prior loops, he insisted on striking first while the cult thought the mist blockade still stood, pushing a plan to lure the Archbishop out and end the fight instantly with a small, hidden strike team. When Ferris asked about success chances, he answered with full confidence that the cult would come to him, and Julius pressed that a decoy mission requires unshakable resolve. He accepted that weight without flinching. He explained Sloth's structure as groups called fingers, roughly 10 teams under the Archbishop, which meant the fight could involve multiple coordinated cells instead of one massed army. As insurance, he had asked Anastasia and Russell to hire every traveling merchant's dragon carriage, paying full price from Roswaal's purse so villagers could be evacuated quickly and quietly without warning the cult. Julius and TB moved to dispatch messengers to guide these merchants and to deliver word to the mansion so no one on Emilia's side would panic at sudden reinforcements. Ricardo and Wilhelm underlined the rare chance to take the fight to the witch cult from a strong position, and he asked everyone to fight for a win with 0 deaths, promising to lean on their strength completely. On the road toward the forest, he rode with Julius and Wilhelm and heard a grim reminder of other archbishops, including Greed, who once conquered the fortress city of Gackler alone and even killed the famed Eight Arms Colgan. Despite that heavy story, Julius and Wilhelm kept their focus on sloth and justice, the same way the White Whale had finally paid after years of cruelty. When the tree line around Roswaal Manor came into view, he steadied himself to face the terror he had failed against before, determined that this time it would end. He reminded himself why he fought: to protect Emilia, the mansion, and the villagers, and to prevent anyone in the Alliance from dying pointlessly. He entered the forest alone without even Patlash, pushing through wet leaves, roots, and narrow animal trails until the air turned heavy with the cult's presence. Black-robed figures silently surrounded him, but did not attack as long as he showed no hostility and asked to meet their leader, which matched his memory of their rules. At a cliff with a boulder-hidden cave, the cult's lair, the Archbishop himself came out to greet him with arms spread and a warped joy. Betelgeuse Romanée-Conti called him a beloved disciple of love and spoke with feverish devotion, his unhealthy appearance sharpened by wild eyes and a twisted smile. He kept his disgust hidden and humored the Archbishop's talk about diligence and love to draw out useful details, asking about the trial and current plans. Betelgeuse confirmed they had used mist to seal the highway so outsiders could not interfere, which told him the cult still believed the blockade stood and did not know the White Whale had fallen. The Archbishop also revealed beliefs about witch factors, trials as tests of sin, and orders recorded in a personal gospel, even asking him to show his own book while speculating that he might be the vacant sin of pride. He stalled, then mocked that he had thrown the book away, which snapped Betelgeuse into a rage and triggered an attack. Unseen hands, multiple invisible arms that crush and tear, lashed out, but he dodged by sight, something almost no one else could do, and pointed behind the Archbishop to trigger the ambush. Mimi and TB revealed themselves and unleashed a shock wave that shattered the cliff face and buried the cave entrance, sealing the fingers inside and isolating the Archbishop outside. Betelgeuse howled about his fingers being murdered, then swerved into cold focus to fight for love. But he was not the one who would be engaged in direct combat. With a scream from above, the sword devil descended, and Wilhelm cut the archbishop in two with a single decisive strike, matching the plan's demand for an instant kill. Just before that ambush, he had told the Alliance there was one more crucial detail. The team that would finish the Archbishop had to be chosen very carefully. He wanted Wilhelm and stealthy Iron Fangs who could keep nerve even if the Archbishop stared right at them, because the enemy's special ability would tear apart a clumsy mass assault. Ricardo balked at a sneaky execution after a pumped-up battle speech, but he explained that the rest of the operation would be loud and honest. Only the leader had to fall instantly. Julius asked why he had not been selected for the decisive strike, and he answered with the real reason. Sloth's unseen hands are invisible to almost everyone and make numbers a liability, while he alone could see and dodge them. Ferris and others were rattled by the idea of invisible hands that could rip off limbs, but he insisted that masses of allies would only mean needless casualties. To minimize risk, he focused on a tiny strike group with precision timing instead of a large melee that would turn into a slaughter under unseen force. The exception that made the ambush viable was simple. He could see the hands, which let the team spring a trap at the right moment without getting torn apart. Mimi jumped in to volunteer herself in TB, Ricardo vouched for her, and Ferris also agreed to join, while Julius accepted the selection and placed trust in Ferris and Wilhelm to keep the team alive. After Betelgeuse fell to Wilhelm's blade and the cave was buried, the four regrouped around the corpse, gathered the gospel the Archbishop had been carrying, and checked for anything else useful. Ferris warned him not to read the gospel because of the rumors around it, saying those books were like scripture that turned recipients into devoted cultists, and even TB and Wilhelm showed deep discomfort toward it. He kept the book as a tool, swearing not to read it, and tried to shake a creeping fear that victory had come too easily, which went against everything he had lived through. At that exact moment, a shrill voice announced the beginning of the end, and a massive explosion consumed a dragon carriage near Earlham village, flipping the world into heat and ringing silence. He woke to the smell of burning, with sight and hearing returning slowly amid screams and smoke, and saw land dragons dead and a carriage torn apart by the blast. Aya, a red common spirit he carried, had deployed a wall at the last instant to keep him alive, and Ferris had survived through healing ability that restored flesh but not clothes. As they stumbled up, they saw the square already turned into a battlefield, knights forming a ring around villagers and merchants, while black-robed attackers advanced with cross-like straight swords. He realized at once how the enemy got inside. Cultists had been smuggled into the village on the very hired carriages, meant to evacuate people, turning his insurance into a trap. He started to shout to scrap the evacuation plan and rush everyone to the mansion, but more threats came crashing down, and the fight widened beyond the square. The cult had prepared triggers, explosives, and ambush positions, and even their fingers still moved, which meant killing Betelgeuse's body did not end the threat immediately. Scattered knights and Iron Fangs tried to cut open a path for non-combatants while the flames spread, and every delay risked more lives through both steel and fire. He had planned for a clean strike and fast evacuation, but the enemy had infiltrated his safety net, forcing him to pivot on the spot. He had warned earlier that Sloth divided followers into finger groups, and the attack now showed how that structure gave them staying power, even after the leader fell. The cult moved with harsh discipline through multiple cells already inside the village, using chaos and terror to lock down the square. He pushed the group to move people out, but he knew from grim experience that the cult would try to collapse any path with sudden violence, while fingers positioned themselves for more explosions. That meant he had to split the burden. Some would guard and shepherd, while he drew Sloth's attention again and peeled the enemy away from the crowd. Soon, Sloth returned in a different vessel, showing that the sin's power could be inherited or projected through other bodies, and the chase began again with crushing invisible force from above. Patlesh carried him at a hard angle, down through the forest as trees burst and shattered from flung rubble, the unseen hands swinging like hammers to tear the ground open beneath their path. He ordered sharp turns and steep descents, while the attacker gouged out her own eye to kill carelessness and keep pressure. a self-mutilating ritual that matched the cult's warped idea of diligence. Every blast tore bark and earth, clipped his shoulder and tossed him in painful rolls. But he refused to cry out while Patlash still ran, using every second to reach a planned point in the woods. Finally, the earth gave way and threw them, slamming him across rocks and leaves until he lay face up, winded, hurting, but alive while Sloth descended beside him. She demanded the gospel back, and he tossed it into the thicket, making her fetch it while he eyed Patlash's position and took in the shape of trees around them. With the book back in her hands, she offered a bitter kind of mercy, asking for his last words and promising to remember them forever. A warped grace he seized as a chance to stall. He raised his left hand to show a small crystal that gave off a white light and asked if she knew what it was, pointing the attacker's attention toward the real trap. He explained that barrier magic crystals were set all over the forest, and the silence that followed told him she had not truly understood what that meant in this zone. Before she could react, the plan went live. A demon beast broke through at the opening he had engineered and sank its fangs into her neck from behind. This was not a random encounter, but a deliberate use of the barrier field, and a gap created by moving a crystal, letting a monster cross into an area the enemy assumed was sealed. By turning the forest rules against Sloth at a critical moment, he created an instant where the invisible pressure ceased and the attacker's body paid the price. Even as that body fell, he knew from bitter experience that Sloth's threat was not done, because the Sin's presence could jump to other fingers and keep hunting. That meant he had to keep moving, relay the danger to allies, and prepare another kill window before the next possession used surprise to flip the fight. He climbed back to Patlash, checked her breaths again, and urged her on while smoke rose behind them, and the forest crackled with the sound of breaking branches. In this arc, survival meant finding repeatable tricks against a power that hid in bodies and struck with unseen strength. And he leaned on every tool, partner, and bit of fieldcraft to keep the team a step ahead. Back near the village and along the routes to the mansion, the Alliance split roles to hold lines and ferry people out, while he took the heat from Sloth's returning fingers. Julius and others coordinated to intercept cells and stabilize choke points, while Ferris moved to treat the wounded between bursts of fighting and smoke. The enemy's advantage was surprise and the panic they sowed. The Alliance's advantage was planning, speed, and the will to protect, and he forced Sloth to spend attention on him rather than the crowd. Anytime the cult tried to cut a path with explosions or collapse a section of road, a counter-move came to create another lane, and the escort ring kept shifting to keep civilians away from fresh threats. The key to stopping Sloth was fast identification of each finger group and immediate, overwhelming action against its holder, because a drawn-out fight meant more deaths from invisible force. He used the gospel as bait at times, as well as the scent the cult hated and the crystals that shaped where demon beasts could or could not roam, in order to set up quick kills. Julius's swordsmanship and spiritual arts synchronized with allies to find rhythms in the unseen attacks, and the group exploited those openings instead of trading blows blindly. Wilhelm's blade carved through when the chance appeared, and Iron Fangs hit hard where stealth or sudden force mattered most, showing why the strike team had been picked the way it was. He kept pushing messages and movements to ensure routes toward the mansion remained viable, because the worst outcome would be to get pinned between fires, rubble, and cultists. The hired carriages, once a trap, were repurposed as real lifelines once the ring held firm, and drivers could be vetted and directed without letting another hidden finger slip in. The village's square and exit lanes became a living map that allies adjusted by the minute, turning shouts into coordinated bursts to push back robed attackers. Each time Sloth shifted vessels or changed terrain with unseen hands, he tried to answer with a new angle, a trap with crystals, a decoy path, or a timed strike from allies who could hit before the next possession. The hardest lesson of that day was that killing one body of Sloth did not finish the sin, because the will and power could leap to another finger and continue the assault. That meant the team had to treat every victory as a window rather than an end, using each fall of a holder to reposition villagers and narrow where the next attack could start. He carried the gospel he had taken from Betelgeuse not as a scripture, but as a lure and proof, which drew the sin's attention and made it chase him instead of cutting deeper into the crowd. He never opened it, despite curiosity and pressure, remembering Ferris's warning about how such books had pulled people into the cult and how even veterans would not look at it directly. The pattern became identify the current finger, force a reveal through taunts or bait, disorient the holder with terrain or crystal tricks, and then strike with a blade that finished the body before unseen force could crush the team. Every time the sin tried to gather itself, a coordinated attack landed. Every time it tried to scatter, a guided push drove civilians past the gap. Patlish's endurance and his stubborn refusal to slow down kept the sin's eyes locked on him, while allies like Julius, Ferris, Wilhelm, and the Iron Fangs turned seconds into safe distance for others. The village burned in places, but the ring held, and the escape lanes remained open often enough that families crossed it out of killing zones instead of being trapped by fear. He kept thinking in simple terms to avoid panic. Pull the sin away, end the current finger fast, move people, repeat, and never give the enemy a clean shot at the crowd. Where the enemy expected a cornered defense, they found planned aggression. Where they expected chaos to help them, they found a circle that would not break under screaming and smoke. Even as his body ached and ears rang, he did not stop calling for adjustments, because hesitation meant the unseen force would find the next neck or spine. In this kind of fight, mercy meant speed, and courage meant making the enemy look at him instead of a crying child at the edge of the square. By turning the forest barriers into traps, staying mobile, and trusting a small team to land decisive blows, he stripped Sloth of bodies faster than the sin could make the chaos pay. Each fall of a holder bought precious time for another group to clear a lane, and for Ferris to pull one more person back from the edge between smoke and steel. The Alliance kept pressure on their remaining fingers, refusing to let the sin choose easy prey, and the repeated kills finally broke the rhythm that had made the cult so deadly. The gospel in his pocket was never a guide for him, but it was a magnet for their hate and a reminder of why he could not let any of his people be taken by that book or that power. When the noise faded and the enemy's bodies stopped moving, the square still smelled of ash, but the ring was unbroken, and the path to the mansion remained in their hands. He had promised to lean on his allies and ask for a victory with no deaths, and while the day was scarred and hard, the way they chose to fight saved the lives that could be saved. The sin of sloth had been cut down again and again until it could not rise in that place, and the Alliance's choice to attack first, hold lines, and trust a small strike force had made the difference. He had come to that forest with fear and resolve, and left it with fewer illusions, but the same determination to protect Emilia, the mansion, and the people who had put their faith in him.